Welcome to The Healthy Advisor, a podcast from WealthManagement.com focused on advisors' personal well-being and healing. I'm Diana Britton, managing editor of WealthManagement.com, and in this podcast we explore some of the struggles and personal development issues facing advisors and financial services professionals, and how to get to a place of healing for mind, body, and spirit. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Healthy Advisor podcast, and thanks for joining us. As you may know, this is the podcast focused on financial advisor health and well-being, and today's guest definitely counts on that score. Her name is Paula Nangle. She's the president and a senior wealth advisor at Marshall Financial, a fee-only RIA that offers holistic wealth management services to clients of all life stages. Paula, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure to be here with you today, Diana.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this one. So Paula took a little bit of an unconventional path into wealth management. She started her career in pharmaceuticals before recognizing the need for a more balanced, sustainable life. And after, some time as a stay-at-home mom, she turned her passion for personal finance into a career dedicated to helping others achieve financial wellness. She's also just super healthy, loves to work out. She's a retired triathlete, a yoga instructor, and just deeply committed to well-being in all aspects of her life. So, Paula, I wanted to talk about your journey. Start from the beginning, I guess. What was your childhood like? I know you had mentioned to me that your parents struggled a little bit financially.
Yeah. So, in terms of my childhood, I'd say I had a pretty happy childhood, loving parents and, pretty stable environment. But I saw my parents struggle with money, like having enough money, making ends meet. My mom was a registered nurse, and when we were little, she was working mostly part-time. And then my dad started his own business. And, with new businesses, cash flow isn't always steady. So at a young age, I feel like I experienced some pretty heated conversations around money, which this young childhood experiences kind of stay with you. And so I think that was probably the beginning. And I watched, my mom ended up going back to work full time. And she was, I would say, the primary breadwinner for our family and was always very conscientious about money and managing money.
Yeah. And I know that your mom, sort of gave you some good advice when you were younger. What was that advice that she gave you?
She gave me a lot of good advice, but the one that really, I think, had the biggest impact on me is probably part of our bedtime routine was the story. And we would talk about what I want to be when I grow up. And she said, Paula, you can be anything you want to be. You just have to be able to take care of yourself. You can't count on anyone else to do that for you. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something I really took to heart.
Yeah. And continue on that thread a little bit, I guess. How have you kind of lived that out, and how did that kind of influence your path into, a career?
So I would say, growing up, education was always important in our family, and there was a big focus on that. And so I would say very motivated in school, and, went off to college with, an idea of what I wanted to do. But when you're 17 years old, who really knows what you want to do? But through a rather circuitous route. I started out, my undergrad was in food science and human nutrition, which I actually ended up getting a graduate degree in. And then I was like, okay, now I got to find a job. So, first jobs are always a little bit challenging, I would say. So one of my first jobs was testing basically roadkill for pesticide residues in a testing lab. Very glamorous work. And then, through a series of events, I reconnected with one of my friends from grad school, and she had gone to New York and was working for a pharmaceutical company. And she's like, Paula, you gotta come check this out. This is great. And so she made the intro, for me to the pharma business. And, that was the beginning of my career. Really, for me, opened up like a whole new world of job possibilities that I really didn't know anything about. It was a long time ago. They don't have the same kind of resources that are available today in terms of trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. I feel like when I was in high school, it was like, well, you could go be a secretary, or, like it wasn't like you should be on the, business management path. It was, a very different mindset back then.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like even today there's like this whole, world of careers out there that people don't know about. And, there's very little education about like what fields are out there and what might match your skills and things like that. I guess I'm curious, like tell me about what the pharmaceutical business was like. What was your experience, working in that field?
Yeah. So it was, as I said, it was like opening up a whole new world for me. And it was a lot of fun, and it was educational. I mean, I was working on therapies to help improve people's lives. I started out in clinical research, and, obviously I started out in an entry-level position, but it was a growing company. And so very quickly, I had new career opportunities open up to me. So I, moved into business development, and then eventually into a marketing role. And along the way, it was just, a lot of new and exciting, interesting work to be done. We spent time talking to thought leaders, trying to figure out what was the best way to develop and market a drug, for a particular population. So, it was just a lot of very interesting work, but also very demanding. It was long hours. I was, needed to travel fairly extensively. By this point in my life, I had gotten married, and my husband and I had started a family, and he also had a very demanding career. And our kids at that point, the two youngest ones were, I guess, 2 and 4. And we're like comparing our calendars, like, are you going to be home on Wednesday? Because I have to be in, he would travel internationally. Mine was more U.S. travel. But, it's like someone's got to be home to take care of the kids.
Yeah.
So it's just, after a while, I took a step back and I said, you know what, I got one shot at raising these kids. And if someone's going to screw them up, it might as well be me. So I ended up managing to turn my full-time job into a part-time job, which is legitimately a part-time job. Because one of the struggles was like, my husband was like, you're not going to go part-time and still do full-time work. So anyway, I did manage to do that for a while. And I cherish that time that I had with them when they were little. And then there was I guess I did the part-time thing for about 2 years. And then the company reorganized and they eliminated that part-time role, which was fine. And then I was fully a stay-home mom for probably about a year. And I quickly realized that, I need something more engaging, because I'm wired to work. I thrive on it. I enjoy it. And, no one was thriving with me at home full time. Like, I don't think it was great for my kids. I don't think it was great for my marriage. It wasn't great for me. So I did a little soul searching and tried to figure out, all right, what's the next chapter? And through some research, I, learned about the certified financial planner designation and, learned a little bit about that, went back to school to fulfill the education requirements, passed the exam. And then I was like, okay, now I got to figure out how to get a job in this or how to get my experience requirement. So that was the beginning of this latest chapter in my life.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm wondering, I know, you kind of did the research, but was there something that triggered your interest in financial planning and personal finance? And I mean, it seems like everyone kind of has an experience that leads them into that field.
Yeah, I think it was a couple of things. I think going back to, my childhood and that experience, and just remembering looking at my parents thinking there's got to be a better way. Because I think money was stressful for them, and I didn't want to repeat that for myself. And then I think at that point in my life, my husband and I both had pretty successful careers, and we were starting to build, our own wealth. And I was like, well, and I had done a lot of, I was always reading before I was in this field, I was always reading about personal finance, and certainly by no means an expert, but it was just another motivation. It's like, well, if I can figure out how to manage my own finances better, maybe I can help other people too.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we talk a lot about, women who leave the workforce for a little while to take care of the kids and then coming back in, can be challenging. What were some of the biggest challenges, when you made that career switch?
There were quite a few. I mean, was very fortunate and blessed to have a supportive spouse, because when you go from two incomes to one income, that makes a significant impact on your finances.
Yeah.
And, I think also going from a, relatively lucrative career to like lowest rung on the ladder and trying to climb back up again is challenging, makes you, but I knew what I was getting into, and I felt passionate about the work that I wanted to do. I was very fortunate in, on my path that I encountered many people who were very helpful and generous with me with their time and guidance, and offered me opportunities, to join their firms and learn and grow. So it's essentially starting over from scratch. So a lot of new learning to do.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess I can see how this industry would be a little bit easier to transition into, because it's not like you're getting hired in, but you're building a book of business, right? And gathering clients, although you might have been hired onto a firm. I guess I'm wondering, I know that, part of the reason is you kind of wanted a little bit more of a balanced life. And how did the wealth management business provide a better work-life balance than pharma?
I think in a lot of ways, one was, not having to travel. That was big. I mean, sometimes there's some travel involved, but it's usually not mandatory, or there's a lot of flexibility around when it gets scheduled. I was fortunate enough to join a firm very close to where I live, so it eliminated an hour plus commute from my pharma job. And there's also, a supportive, flexible work environment. So, if I needed to leave work to take care of my kids, or at that time, actually, my mom needed me a lot, and, just be able to deal with family responsibilities. It was a much more manageable situation from a, work-life perspective.
Yeah. I'm actually reporting on a study right now from the Ensemble practice, which tries to understand the experience of women, of moms in this industry. And one of the things that the study found is that 50% of moms who answered the survey gave a 9 or a 10 in terms of career satisfaction, working at an advisory firm. 41% had a 7 or an 8, like a little bit of a solid level of satisfaction. But I mean, overall, mothers, I guess, seem to be pretty satisfied with this career. And one other thing that I thought was interesting is that, on average, we asked, these moms working at advisory firms how many hours on average they're working per week. And it was around 40 hours average. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. I guess you think about a lot of advisors working really long hours and working weekends, and that's not the case. I mean, it seems like it can be a career that helps you get that balance, that work-life balance, and also a lot of flexibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your interest in nutrition and fitness. I know you originally wanted to study nutrition in college. And so tell us a little bit about that, about your interest in those things and how that came about.
Yeah. So I think, again, going back to my early years, my mom was a nurse, and I feel like she was kind of ahead of her time in terms of diet and nutrition. A lot of crazy stuff back then. I mean, my sister she struggled with her weight. And at one point the pediatrician put her on basically amphetamines. So you go on speed when you're, 12 years old. Doesn't seem like a recipe for success.
Yeah, it might not be the right answer.
No. as he was smoking his pipe. But yeah, so I mean, it was an area that I think was really just beginning to have more understanding. And I'm just looking over the last 20 years, how much information has exploded about, food and nutrition and, how it's impacts your health. And I found it very interesting. And I think when I started down that path, it seemed like the only career opportunity was a dietitian in a hospital, which did not appeal to me at all. And so I went, and they had a food science program. So food science is everything that happens to food before you eat it. And nutrition is everything that happens after you eat it. So I had a science background, and I really thought I wanted to go into the sciences. And so food science was a very applied science. So that I thought was interesting, taking all the chemistry and biology and applying it to a system. So it's just something I see the importance of it for overall health and well-being. And while I didn't pursue a career in that area, I think all the things I learned really supported me in my pharmaceutical business and in my life.
Yeah. And so I know that you are now a yoga instructor as well. Really interesting to me. How did you discover yoga?
I had a friend who once said, "You don't find yoga, yoga finds you." And I think it was after I had been doing triathlons for a while, and I had some overuse injuries, and it was like the off season. And there's this wonderful studio literally across the street from my office that I've walked by a number of times, and just like, I should check that out. And finally I got up the courage. I don't know why it took courage to go in there, but it did. And I was hooked. So in this particular studio, they focus on a style of yoga called Ashtanga yoga. So it's a set series of postures that you do. So it's structured, but the beautiful part for me, it's a moving meditation. So you're focused, your mind, your breath, your body, and you're moving through these postures. So you're not thinking. It like eliminates, well, it doesn't totally eliminate, but it helps you reduce all of those random thoughts that keep popping into your head, and really connect in with your breath and your body. And, it's just, I find it to be a very healing, nurturing practice. So when they offered the studio owner, she was offering a yoga teacher training, and I really had no interest in teaching, but I wanted to learn more about the practice and about yoga. So that got me started on the yoga journey. So I went through the 200-hour training, and then she offered shortly after that a 300-hour. So now I'm like a 500-hour Yoga Alliance certified instructor. And I do teach. I only teach once a week, but I enjoy sharing the practice with others and helping them, grow in their practice and experience that same beautiful, moving meditation. So it's rewarding, and maybe that'll be my encore career after financial advisor.
Yeah. It sounds like a great career. I guess I'm wondering if yoga and some of those meditative practices have helped you, navigate your business as a financial advisor, manage some of the stress and, some of the struggles that could just come from everyday work life.
I feel like it has really helped me. I think I'm a lot more aware of when I'm under stress, and I can recognize it, and and also the same thing with my clients. We can take a step back, and it's like, all right, let's just take a step back and breathe for a minute, even just for a minute. I think, closing your eyes, focusing on the breath, and recognizing, that you feel that emotion moving through you, and it's like, just let it move, let it go. It's not, may not be serving you. And I do find having some of these practices to go to, it helps me stay calm when my clients might be freaking out about something. And I think when I'm calm, it helps them, feel better.
Yeah. I mean, especially right now, there's a lot going on with the markets. And I'm wondering if, are you having clients stressed out or worried about that? And is that kind of helping you navigate that at all?
I think it is, yes. And to answer the first question, yes, we are having clients who are, feeling stressed out for different reasons. They're worried about the markets, but then I show them their portfolios. And so far, I mean, markets are volatile, but, they're not 100% in equities. And you talk them through that and explain how, we've got money set aside for their short-term needs, or depending on what their situation is. I think putting things in perspective helps. And then I think just being able to listen to what their concerns are. And a lot of it is nothing I can do anything about. It's, they're not things that I can change, or, we can monitor what's going on. I mean, some people are concerned that, Medicare is going to go away, or Social Security is going to go away. And I don't have a crystal ball, but I believe that they are not going to go away. There could be some changes, but all we can do is plan as best we can for a variety of scenarios. But I think staying centered and focused and not allowing the emotions to get the better of us is empowering for me. And I think I can, I'm using air quotes here, channel that through my clients just by the conversations that we have.
Yeah. And I'm sure they see, how committed you are to well-being and fitness and nutrition, outside of work, and they, kind of see that example that you're setting for them, not just from a financial standpoint, but from just overall well-being standpoint. I guess I'm wondering, most of our listeners are financial services professionals themselves. Are there any, maybe tools from yoga or nutrition or fitness that, they can kind of take home and put into practice that you might provide?
I think probably one of the easiest things to adopt is even just a mini meditation practice. I'm not the best meditator. It's something I aspire to be. But that's why I think I appreciate the yoga practice so much, because it gives the mind an object to focus on, like the body moving. You're focused on that. But if you can just allow yourself to sit in a comfortable position and close your eyes and take a deep breath in and really feel the breath move through you on the inhale and the exhale, and repeat that, and really just focus on the breath and try to just let all of the other random thoughts, the monkey mind thoughts, go away. Just, they're just thoughts. They let them come, let them go. And I find if I'm having a stressful day, if I can do that, or if I can walk outside and do that, it's almost like hitting a reset button for me. And I think that's an easy practice to do. It doesn't require any training. Everyone knows how to breathe. And pay attention to your breath. Your breath tells you so much about what's going on in your body and your life.
Yeah, I love that. I was kind of just trying to do it just now. But, I think I'm afraid we're just about out of time, but I'd like to thank my guest, Paula Nangle, for being on the podcast and sharing her story with me, for sharing just all these great best practices that we can all implement. Paula, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Diana, for having me on. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the work that you do in sharing this in your podcast.
Yeah. And you're part of that. So thank you so much. If you'd like to reach out to Paula, if you have any questions for her or comments, you can email her at pnangle@marshallfinancial.com. And if you have a struggle and wish to share your experiences and help others in similar situations, please feel free to reach out to me at diana.britton@informa.com. I'd like to thank you for listening to The Healthy Advisor. If you've not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This is Diana Britton reminding you that where there's healing, there is hope. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to The Healthy Advisor, a podcast focused on advisors' personal well-being and healing. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of WealthManagement.com. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice. Always seek the advice of your healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your particular situation.